The city of Columbus was young and growing. Immigration from Germany was, at first, just a trickle. The Germans left the familiarity and political oppression of the Old World for a better life. Their experiences are echoed by those who came much, much later.
And we came from Germany in 1955. We arrived in Columbus 5 o'clock in the morning. I think that day it was 100 degrees. And we was dressed. Now for winter time, then it was cold on a boat. It was rough sea all the time. Our sponsor was from Columbus, so we came here to Columbus. Our desire was to go to Eureka, California. Or when we came to Columbus then, we ran out of money. It used to be a time everybody wanted to go to America. They think money grows on trees in America. Everybody had that desire to go to the States, get rich. But after they came, it really was not that way. They had to start smaller, you know.
A lot of people coming to Columbus, looking around, possibly with the idea of going on further, discover that the national road, which they had been traveling on, doesn't go any farther, and it won't for several years. And so some people who hadn't really planned on living here at all makes it this far, hears that basically there might be cholera a little farther ahead over in Indiana, and decides to stay here. Many people moving down to this part of the world were basically buying land down here because it was cheap, because it was outside the city limits. Pure and simple.
When the Germans finally started to arrive in significant numbers around 1840, this was typical of their first, more permanent homes. Story-and-a-half houses, shoulder to shoulder.
And you could shoot a shotgun right through because the kitchen door was in line with the front door. And that's why they call them shotgun houses.
The common theme is that these people were very modest, very simple. They weren't showy. They weren't trying to impress their neighbors. They just wanted a very simple, clean home for their family.
The Germans, being as frugal as they were, would build their houses right on the sidewalk. And then the idea was to leave enough backyard, because these were all small lots, for a flower garden, a vegetable garden, and for an outdoor privy.
By 1850, over half of new construction in Columbus was in the German-speaking district. When the Civil War came, the largest ethnic group to serve for the Union was German-born Americans. The states providing the most German-born soldiers? New York, Missouri, and Ohio.
And then during the Civil War, there were quite a few of those that served in the Army for the North, so that kind of bought their way into acceptance, you know.
If you take a look at when many of these houses are built, I think you're going to find that most of them were built in the years after the Civil War to the turn of the 20th century.
The Germans brought a little bit of their home country to Columbus. Reinhardt Street is named after Jacob Reinhardt, a worker on the National Road who settled here and printed Columbus's most successful German-language newspaper. Kossuth Street was named for Louis Kossuth, a fugitive of Hungary who was a champion of civil liberties, a cause close to the hearts of Germans who fled political oppression. Statues of Kossuth are found in German settlements throughout the U.S. The Germans brought music. Small brass bands that would develop later into military-style marching bands.
Immigrants that were coming over during the 1840s were people who were looking for a better life, but they were missing what we call Gemütlichkeit, friendship, fellowship. So one night in late 1848, a justice of the peace by the name of Brooke living here on High Street, decided he would invite some over to his house. So 12 men came, they had 7 candles, and they just started singing and enjoying the tunes from the old country. And ever since that time, the Columbus Manor Corps has been in existence.
We always felt that perhaps the Manor Corps was more the professional people, whereas the Germania was more the craftsmen and the people like that, I think.
And of course, the Germans brought beer. In 1834, Louis Hoster was one of the first brewers in Columbus.
And he founded it right where there's a dip in Front Street. That was the ravine from which an artesian well came and flowed down to the Scioto River. The water was deemed so pure and fresh that he thought it would be perfect for brewing beer. Not shortly thereafter, he was joined by 4 other competitors.
I think that the building was located here because this happened to be open land and open property, and that they knew that the water source was nearby, the spring source was probably nearby, and that they just tunneled down or built some kind of well to access the source underneath the building.
August Wagner, to use the German pronunciation, was a very robust man. It is said that the statue of King Gabrinus, which stands close to the corner of Liberty in front, is modeled after him. He's quite a heroic, proportioned person. He promoted his beer by, for example, having people break giant stones on his stomach with a sledgehammer. One day somebody said that the people in the Wagner brewery were getting too drunk on beer, and he went in and drank a whole keg of beer himself and didn't show any effects of it, just to prove that they were wrong.
I always like to say that there would really not be what we call German Village if it hadn't been for the fact that we had the brewery district.
In essence, German Village and the brewery district were really one big neighborhood, the German neighborhood. In fact, the workers lived in German Village, and the Hotsy-Totsy people lived in the brewery district. Particularly as the smell of the breweries grew, they tend to move down High Street, so you see a number of rather large houses on High Street, which were built by the brewers to show off their wealth and to get away from the fumes of the stables and hops.
The breweries are a major employer. I don't want to overrate the breweries because there are other major businesses that the German community gets involved with other than brewing beer. And frankly, the breweries aren't going to employ more than a few hundred people at peak, where the carriage industry in this town, by the end of the 19th century, is employing thousands of people at peak.
One carriage that was a welcome sight was full of sausages. In 1886, Fred Schmidt concocted a recipe that called for a secret blend of spices and the best cuts of meat smoked over hickory wood.
When I was a kid, I used to come down and visit my grandmother and grandfather lived next door to the packing company. We killed about 100 hogs a day at that particular time. They were unloading on the trucks. Some of them get loose. We had to chase them around the neighborhood to get them back in.
And don't forget the churches. Germans built a number of churches, some Lutheran and some Catholic. Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church is believed to be one of the oldest Protestant church buildings in Columbus. And then there's St. Mary's.
1863 is when they established this parish to meet the needs of the people in this area. And that's how the Germans have always looked at this church, this grand old St. Mary's. It's been very important to them over the years, and one of the biggest impacts was not only a spiritual center for the Germans on the south side of Columbus, but it also was providing an education for their children. And of course they wanted them to learn English to assimilate them into the American life, essentially.
German immigrants were serious about education, so much so that they built and managed many schools. Columbus residents were impressed and sent their children to the German schools. For the very young, there was kindergarten, a new concept brought to Columbus by Louisa Frankenberg, a former student of Frederick Froebel, the man who invented it. For those wishing to pursue a profession, there was Capital University, which would become one of the oldest and largest Lutheran-affiliated universities in North America.
At the end of the American Civil War, the German community is emerging as a major political, economic, and social power within a city itself that is on the grow.
By the late 1800s, there were three distinct areas of German Village: the brewery district, that pumped out 1.3 million gallons of beer every year. Then there was Central Market, one of four major market areas in Columbus. It sat between Livingston and downtown. Here you could get 5 different kinds of horseradish, and later, eggs from the Columbus Egg Lady. The area also included a new hotel.
The Great Southern Hotel was built by German interests, essentially to try to bring more trade to the southern, and that is German, end of downtown.
And then the residential area, with brick homes and brick streets. But it didn't always look like this. For a time, smokehouses, bakeries, outhouses, and slaughterhouses dotted the neighborhood. It smelled. There were saloons and hay sheds, a stocking factory, undertakers, and tailors. The largest manufacturer on the south side, the Columbus Watch Company, made timepieces that still run today. And take note, just because it was German built doesn't mean the homes in the village are built in a German style. The types of homes you'll find in the village were simply popular architecture of the time.
You can't fly down these streets going 40 or 50 mile an hour. You can fly down them going 20 or 25 mile an hour like my wife and I do in our electric car. That quaintness, I think, will always reflect German Village, and it will always make it attractive.
World War I brought a wave of anti-German sentiment. People of German ancestry were considered suspect. Even flying ace and Columbus native Eddie Rickenbacker changed the spelling of his name because French and British officials were suspicious of what they saw as a German flyer in an American uniform.
The best way to understand what happens during World War I, when German schools are closed, when street names are changed in the German community, when German books are burned at Broad and High, is to recognize that the German population is quite small compared to the totality of the population of the town. In short, that population has acculturated. And that is why there is not more opposition to those actions taken against the German community at that moment in time.
Allied heavy bombers continued to strike at marshalling yards. Gießen was bombed in spite of bad weather with devastating...
But right around the corner was another war, with a bigger wave of anti-German sentiment.
Allied air Operation Clarion was carried out against all small and medium rail points in Germany by more than 7,000...
I think World War II even had the worst effect than World War I. The anti-German attitude, I think, and was strong, I think, in the Second World War.
Kind of the opposite of during the Civil War here. Rather than the community strengthening, Germans in Columbus and in other Midwestern cities really took a hit. It was not popular to be German. A lot of families changed their last names to sound more American. And this part of Columbus, it was still referred to as the South End then, was known for being German. And so a lot of people left.
Still, there were some who stayed, and they marked each year's passing at Schiller Park. There were Easter egg hunts and bathing beauty pageants. And in 1959, the Germania Club started the first Oktoberfest.
There are probably living today more people who attended that Oktoberfest than attended the Snow Bowl at Ohio State in the early 50s.
They thought it'd be great to have it in Schiller Park right in the heart of the German village, and it was a great idea. Of course, they go to the city of Columbus, and you cannot serve beer in a park anywhere. Around the edges, mostly on 3rd Street, there was a couple vendors who sold beer. And it was really great that they did, because it was pretty successful. But after that Oktoberfest, the people who were drinking there, on their way home, they put empty cans of beers on all the wrought iron fences. Every spindle had a beer can put on it. So it perturbed a lot of the people that lived close by, and that ran it out of German Village for a long, long time.